My name is Duncan Motanya, and we are recording live from Diabetes and Hypertension Foundation. Let me call it studios here in Gara. It also happens to be the same, let me say, location where we also have our clinic. We generally, as I think an institution, we are delighted to have a gentleman called Eli. Eli, I think we knew each other from Facebook, right?
Yes, yes, that's right.
So we gonna have a chat around Eli's experience with type 1 diabetes. But let me not take the honors of allowing Eli to introduce himself. Karibu sana Eli.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. My name is Eli Omondi Odhiambo. I've been diabetic since childhood, just under the age of 10 years. And I'm 50 now.
Oh,
I'm not ashamed to say so. 50, but I still feel 25.
you look young
Yes, thank you.
for 50.
Yeah,
So karibu sana Eli. And just for a bit of context, we are not planned this kind of interview or podcast. Eli was meant to drop some items, an insulin pump for a friend of mine. And while it came, we were like, oh, well, why not record? So Eli, thank you again for accepting to share your experience.
yeah,
So I'm
thank
gonna
you.
take you back a little bit so that I think to give people an opportunity to know you a little bit better. Um, you live in the UK. Maybe you can take us a little bit back, from the time when you were diagnosed.
Yeah,
How was the experience? Were you living in Kenya? Just general background, from where it all started.
yes. Oh, okay. I was going to school as a young child, and
You're
the
in Kenya, sorry.
yes, here in Kenya, and the diabetes, the diagnosis was a bit strange, if I have to say so, because when I was hospitalized, it looks like I wasn't taking any nutrition for a couple of weeks. I was basically becoming a skeleton, and I was rejecting all type of meals and stuff like that. I was hospitalized, and then basically put on drips, those as a supplementary to the nutrition.
Did the doctors immediately sort of like identify that it was diabetes? Because
No,
we
no,
see
no,
a lot
no.
of misdiagnosis, yes.
No, they hadn't identified. And in fact, the part where my mother had some kind of insurance, which supported my stay in that private hospital. The diagnosis was, I think they were saying something like amoebiosis or something like that. I'm not medically equipped to say exact thing, but it must have been gastroenteritis, which is when uh, the intestine is packed with stuff that shouldn't be there,
Mhm.
nausea and all those kinds of things, because basically my blood sugars were uh, up the roof. So what I'm aware of is that it was a medical student
Okay.
who actually um, changed my treatment on her night shift.
Wow.
Yeah, she decided, no, this guy,
This,
this is
yeah,
something else, and they unplugged the glucose
whatever
drips and all. Yeah, and
the drip.
then the
Tell
next
me,
thing they knew, I was type 1 diabetic.
all right.
Yeah,
So, of course, you're young, and I'm assuming, that kind of diagnosis in a way would change, like, you generally, like, you are, I would say, schooling and all that. I'm just curious to know, how did you take it? You also your mom, because now there's, they're told, now Eli has to be on insulin, and then of
yeah.
course people would always ask, is there a kiwa or rather would we treat it? So I just also want to understand how was the news, how are the news received by yourself and your parents?
Well, I think my mom was kind of shocked, because she wasn't really aware what way to go with the because this is a young person who is now going to have to inject themselves. I think that time I had started off with like 2 or 3 injections a day, and and she had to kind of um, observe my actual use of insulin. Was I doing the right thing? In fact, I started injecting myself without any support from any adult apart from the hospital
Okay.
from my childhood. So it was just me doing that myself. And it was something strange, in the family, in the household, because they had to, back in the day, um, the type of food you ate was more of the therapy alongside the insulin. They were more strict about, you have to eat brown ugali. It has to be wholemeal foods, all those kind of things, which nowadays have kind of, diabetes therapy is different now. You can eat white ugali as
Yeah.
long as you do your carb counts and stuff. Yeah.
Especially for type 1 and you're a kid.
Yes.
So of course, going back again, how did it change, like now you're schooling,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's I really loved sports. I enjoyed football a lot. I think I used to be a striker, something like
uh,
that. I didn't end up in any premiership or anything like that, but here, I was in love with football until I started wearing my glasses. But the thing is, that's the major part of the diabetes as a child. It kind of uh, affected my sporting life because I used to be extremely tired, especially when the blood sugars were very high. You didn't really know the medical aspects of that. You just knew that the blood sugars were
it
so
was so high.
high.
Yeah.
As a child, you were told not to eat this, not to eat that. I mean, I remember I was even chewing sugarcane in Kissy,
Speaking of
because
which,
which I shouldn't have, you know.
speaking of which, because one of the, I think also kind of dilemma or challenge I see, especially for parents with type 1 kids, is that they would in a way want to police them, and sometimes of course when these kids change, maybe they yeah, they probably go puberty and all these changes, it kind of like makes it very difficult, I think, for the family. I don't know, like, how are your parents? Were they strict? How did you kind of, how are you,
Um,
yeah, perceiving the
I
guidance
keep
and
referring to my mother because she's the one who was much more involved with my condition. Uh, uh,
interesting.
yeah, she,
Sorry,
yeah, she,
okay, yeah, yeah,
she,
right,
she
yes,
was very strict, especially what I ate. I can see the frustration that went through her mind, and she used to tell all her friends, you'd think I was dying tomorrow, because it's as if she felt the condition more than myself,
yeah,
you know.
mm,
But I can understand, because that's a maternal instinct.
yeah,
Um, I remember that there was, in terms of the therapy, there was a lady friend of my mother. Uh, she was offering alternative therapy.
ah, okay.
So, herbs and all these
Don't
mitishamba
tell me you
things.
are put on those as
Oh,
well.
yeah, oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
She was actually she was a famous broadcaster at the time. Will not be shy to mention her name because it's not in a bad way. No, it's not in bad light.
Yes, yes.
Shangazi Dolly. She was in
Oh,
the VOK back then, Voice of Kenya,
okay.
um, and she used to specialize on those kinds of herbs. And they thought that this would be a remedy. My mom actually believed this, and the doctor, of course, was not happy when she heard that I was missing some insulin doses so that I could take those herbs. And apparently, the herbs were supposed to be the artificial pancreas.
It never works. Actually, for anyone, I think also who's probably listening or will watch this video later, please stay away from herbs because also in the experience, as a diabetes educator and the founder, DMM Singara, I have seen, I am telling you, so many patients who have gone into complications, because of ignoring medical treatment. And I mean, of course, I'm a religious person. I've also had people who, also want to believe, or rather take their faith a bit a notch higher. And
Yes.
sometimes, actually, not sometimes, most of the time, especially for type 1, you don't get insulin. Of course, you would hope for a miracle, but sometimes the miracle doesn't always come. So it's, I think, also one of the things that we need to point out, that medication and insulin is a must. Forget those herbal things and everything. Um, Now, fast forward maybe a little bit. Now, how did you end to how go to UK, and
Yeah.
of course, if there are any other kind of, I would say, significant.
Comparative.
No, no, not
Oh,
really.
sorry.
Yeah, before, of course, like maybe from the time now you were young up to the time you went to the UK.
Yeah.
Any major life milestones in life,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
all that. And one of the other things that I think I really like, or rather in many ways it led me to reaching out to you, is that you live your full life.
Yes. Yes.
Diabetes really
Yeah.
does
It's no
hit,
object.
completely. Yeah, so maybe you could now give us a bit of that story. Yeah, also to the guys, especially on our WhatsApp groups. I know, I'm going to come to our chats a bit later on, so if you've got any question for Eli, I think I'll read through the comments in the groups, so feel free to also type some of those comments. Yes, Eli.
Yes. So basically, back then there was a government provision of insulin here in Kenya, and but you see, there was the idea that you don't have the correct dose because the governments were struggling. The government was struggling as well at that time. So you also had to go and purchase some of the doses, at the chemist. So I think a lot of people would have struggled at that time, trying to find the correct, were they diagnosed, were they given the best prescription for their type of type 1? Sorry, was it, the right type of medication for that type 1, or things like that? I remember some of the things we used then and now. Before I moved to the UK, I actually moved to the UK at a very young age. I mean, okay, I would say 19 is young.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
So
Yeah.
I was 19.
Hmm.
So that's a long, long time.
Yes.
I've not really changed my accent. My Luo accent is still there,
Mhm.
intact.
I like that
Um,
you also know some bit of Kissy. Yes,
yes,
yes, yes. Please go on.
but when
Yes.
I start now talking with Irish accent as
Yeah.
well and
Mm,
other accents there,
mm.
then you'll know that
This is
accents are just accents. But
mm,
anyway, long story short,
mm.
um, I remember before I left Kenya, we used to, use those disposable syringes, which I believe are still being used here.
Yes, yes. And the pens probably were
Yeah.
not as frequent or easily
No, there was
available.
no pens.
There were no insulin
There
pens.
was no pens.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh, I'll come to the pens in the UK.
yes.
Yeah. But there was no pens at that time. And basically, I used to repeat needles,
Hmm.
Yeah, even in school, because, there was no, um, it was a disaster, I would say,
Okay.
Um, then there was a time, just after my move to the UK, the doctor tells me, this is what you're going to use. These are your new insulin provision gadgets, And I remember there was like a glass syringe
Hmm.
that I don't know what material it is, but you had to boil it. You had to sterilize it.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
remember those. Yes, 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 yes.
So there was that,
Mm,
and then and then at times, going back to Kenya, back and forth. Now I'm talking about, I'm rewinding.
yeah,
Uh, we sometimes used to sterilize the syringe that we were not supposed to sterilize.
yeah.
But in the UK, then I started using those that glass and then the metallic one, which I still keep as a memento
Okay.
from I would say 1993.
Wow.
I still have those two items.
Hmm.
Yeah, because it
Interesting.
I have a problem with throwing things.
You're a holder. It's fine. So just a quick one. Let me understand this. So you moved from Kenya to UK,
Yeah.
and of course now I'm assuming that they probably I don't know maybe whether then there was the fast acting insulins and all that, but I'm imagining the care and also now what you were using was slightly different and better. I'm assuming also was it provided for free by the government?
Yeah, the things we're using in the UK, because you're now in the t- in the tax revenue, you know environment. I'm not saying that's not the case in Kenya or in Africa, but you're beginning to work there. You're paying taxes, so your treatment, your therapy is counted on that basis. So basically, if you're getting the insulin, you are getting the insulin for free
Okay.
because you're paying taxes. A national insurance number shows that you're paying taxes, and so on and so forth. Um, so that was something different from Kenya. In fact, not so much different because in Kenya they were also giving
Yeah,
medication,
that time.
but they were not giving everything.
Okay.
Yeah. I think what happened in Kenya was this may sound political in international sense because whenever the Cold War ended, basically what happened was the countries that used to be subsidized or supported by the West or the East, the free markets started. So that direct provision of medicines and things like consumables in the aspects of diabetes slowed down because now the markets were open, the international markets.
Okay.
So I think that changed treatment and therapy in Africa, in Kenya included. So, but over there, they'd been giving, for example, the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, they've been giving free healthcare since 1948.
Okay.
So that's has
Uh,
impacted on how I,
in a positive
yeah,
way, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
So, of course, now at what point now? Because of course now I understand you transitioned now from using pens to the insulin pump. When were you sort of, or when did you start using the insulin pump? And maybe could you demonstrate or give us an idea of how it works?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So I really hated the injections. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
Any person who thinks they can stab themselves four times a day,
I can
they're
imagine.
weird.
I can
If you can
imagine.
do that with a
Yes,
smiling face,
yes,
you can get that World Cup trophy for just piercing yourself every day. I hated it,
yeah, yeah.
um, and I've done that for years. So now I only have that as an emergency because I use the pump, the insulin pump, and if anything happens,
Mm.
the pump is not working, then I go back to the pen.
So, what is
Yeah.
the pump? Maybe to just generally
So
explain.
I'll
Yes,
explain.
yes,
For example,
yeah.
ju-
Maybe our guy could zoom in where it's possible, of course.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah, you can. Feel
so
free to move. Yeah.
this is that is the pump
All right.
that I use,
Mm.
and
What
this
is
one
what
here,
is the name? So,
this is called an Omnipod.
mm.
So as you can see there, that's the syringe, and the needle is here, and this is the pump. So when I open this,
So basically, for I think the people who are viewing,
yeah,
a pump is you use it to sort of like instead of using now the syringes to inject yourself.
yeah,
Generally, what you're saying, the pump is what delivers insulin to you, maybe
yes,
in a programmed way.
yes,
All
and I
right.
can open this because
Yes.
I'll use this
Uh,
from tomorrow morning
okay.
when my old pump has expired, which is it will expire tomorrow.
Okay.
So I can open and just show.
Mm.
So this is what happens. Uh, so that's the pump, um, and this pump is
Mm.
it works with this gadget. It's called the PDM.
It looks like a mobile phone,
It
doesn't it?
looks like
Yeah.
a mobile phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the personal diabetes management. This thing. Um, so basically, it works with the pump via Bluetooth. So what I do is I I basically use this range and needle. This is all new.
Okay.
and I draw that, pumping air into an insulin cartridge, which I don't have here,
All right.
just that like that, and then get 200 maximum units of insulin, then put that in that hole there.
Okay.
This has to be flat,
Okay.
so I put it in the
So the
hole.
insulin goes here.
Yeah,
All
the
right.
insulin goes here.
All right. Is it a what type of insulin? Is it a fast acting or
It's like
Lan
fast
Kamalantas?
acting.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if we're meant to mention
Yeah, that's
names.
fine. I mean,
Yeah,
it's okay. This is majorly for our, channel. So anyway,
yeah,
it goes here, and then what
yeah. And
happens?
then
Mm,
this
mm.
is primed to that.
Okay.
That must be on, and then you'll hear a noise that goes teet, which means they've negotiated. They know this
Knows that.
is aware
Yes.
that that's been primed and it's ready to work.
Okay.
So it's like a radio signal between each other.
Okay.
So then
Mm.
this has an adhesive. I
Can't
peel
tell.
this off. I peel that off. I can't do that now.
Yes. Yes.
So I peel that off, and I can only. So in this here, it will ask me which part of the body I want to put the pump.
Okay.
So I have only four places to do that. Just here on my right thigh, left thigh, or just below the abdomen on either the right side or the left side. And it will usually have an archive of where was the last time I put it,
Okay.
so that I don't have infections and things like that.
Just to be
Yeah.
clear. So is there like a needle here? How
There is
does
a
that?
cannula there. There's a like a needle thing. It's a the plastic bit is the one that links to the blood.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Mm.
sorry, to the skin. It punctures the skin and the insulin goes in.
Okay.
Yeah. So and what happens is this item here is the one that uh, puts the needle in.
Okay.
So you hear some click, boom.
Okay.
So that means it's there. So for example, now my pump is on the left side of my leg,
Okay. On the thigh here.
yeah, on the thigh, and I don't feel anything, but it's there for 24 hours a day for the next. It's supposed to be there for 3 days.
For 3 days.
Yeah.
And of course, that the assumption is that that insulin will last that long. So do you get
Yes.
to, bathe with it and all
Yeah,
that
I
and
can
those?
have a shower with this. I
Okay,
can swim with it
okay,
for probably not more than an hour, otherwise it would just come off.
okay,
On very hot days, I try to avoid not putting the pump here on the belly, but because the adhesive seems to peel off quicker, so I put it on the legs, on the thigh. Yeah, but the pump therapy is something that I am sure will come to our scene here in Kenya. Not very long, not too long. When the time comes, people will have them because, for example, no one ever imagined that there would be pens
yeah.
here in our country, and people are using pens. Yes,
But, of course, the UK government, offers or give this for free.
mm.
That's my assumption, right? And
There is there is that's a correct assumption,
okay,
but it's a limited assumption because majority of the people in the UK, I would say over 80 to 90% are using syringes, are using pens.
okay.
Yes, majority.
So what
Very few use pumps,
comes? Yes.
and some buy pumps.
All right.
Some get it from their National Health Service. Yeah.
So then, could you also now sort of like describe, what is the experience using the pump? How beneficial is it? What is, how is the system intelligent? What does it do to you? Of course, when it's on.
I think one of the main things about it, and I don't want to glorify the pump as if the pens are not good therapy, because most of our people use either a syringe or a pen. Uh, Number one, this is an expensive item, but it's discreet because, for example, if I want an additional dose of insulin, no one knows what I'm doing. They might be thinking I'm on my mobile phone.
Yes.
And it's also got high security because only you know your PIN number or password for this.
Okay.
because if someone knows your password, they can tamper with it, and that's quite dangerous. So other things is that you can set the pump to whichever scenario you're in. You're going for sports. It's a stressful day. If it's a pregnant woman with who is using the pump, there's different levels where it advises what at what pace the insulin can be absorbed. You can suspend the insulin. You can do so many things.
Would you
Yeah.
suspend automatically, or is the machine intelligent enough to give?
For this machine, it has to be told by
Okay,
the user
what?
what. Yeah, yeah. So it has maybe some drawbacks if the training is not captured properly. You have to be trained how
Yeah,
to use
to
it.
use it.
Yeah.
Tell me, I mean, I saw it in our groups. What was your experience using our train with this pump? Was it a train? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, what was the experience? I saw that and
Okay.
yeah,
Basically, I went to use the SGR, and the guy who was one of the security guards was just overzealous, and he literally he nearly removed my pump from my waist.
Jesus, you,
Yeah.
yeah,
I had given him enough warning that there is something I'm wearing which is medical.
yes,
Please don't touch that part of my body. And he just went for it. And it was really annoying. I spoke to the supervisor or manager, and they were very understanding.
yeah,
And they said that from now on,
yeah,
they're going to give proper training to their
guards,
staff
yes,
because they have never seen such a thing. They have seen people with the likes
the
of
pens,
or the
the train,
CGMs like
oh, freestyle kind
Freestyle
of,
Libra.
yes, yes,
They've seen that,
yes,
but they say that they've never seen a pump, and they should be one of their new tick boxes for their
for their
security
staff
people.
to
Yeah,
understand.
but I can't say that you know that person did a bad thing, but it's just he was given enough warning. I don't really get the problem at airports
Yes,
with it. The problem, like with most diabetics, is when they travel with all that medication. Sometimes they do meet some overzealous customs officials,
yes,
but sometimes again in the airports or whichever transport hub, you find that those people are ready to help diabetics
yes,
in many cases, actually.
yeah,
I'll go back to one experience I had years ago in Kenya. I think it was around about 2004. And I went, back then when there were internet cafes,
yes, yes,
it was the in thing.
yes,
So I went to an internet cafe just near near Kimathi Street there, and I remember very well. Sat down, and the next thing I wanted to take my insulin because I felt like my blood sugar was way up the roof.
yeah,
Because as you know, our foods here
yes, of
in
course.
Kenya is most
Carbs,
lots of carbs,
yes, yes.
and we can't stop eating them. We love them.
Tuwezi kuachana na mahindi. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so whenever I come here, I just eat those foods because I'm missing the real McCoy, the organic carbs here.
Yes,
So I just started injecting myself in this internet cafe, and the woman who was running the place, she saw me and she came running to me and she grabbed me
yes,
by
yeah.
the arm. What are you
No
doing?
way. What she think
Yeah,
about
and
doing
she thought I was doing illegal, so-called illicit drugs or
drugs?
something like that.
Yeah,
One person was observing this altercation and he stepped in and said, "Do you not see that person has diabetes?"
yeah.
Uh,
Come on.
and that I think that was
Do you feel like the
it's a
society
bit
in
of
general,
ignorance.
especially Kenya,
Yeah,
do people sort of like really understand all these kind of treatments? Is there
yeah.
something else we could do? But anyway, we'll come
I'll
to
tell you
that. Yes,
something
yes,
because there's this assumption
yeah.
that number one, if you are diabetic, you should have a lot of weight,
Oh,
as
yes.
even if you're type 1.
Mm,
So there's that fat shaming or body shaming thing.
yeah,
But they first ask you, why are you I've had this even in UK, people asking me,
yeah.
are you sure you're diabetic? Because why are you not
You know,
why do you not have much weight,
yes,
So
yes.
there's all this kind of ignorance and stigma and stuff like that. It's not the end of the world. We know how to deal with it. Sometimes we joke about it, you know. Yeah,
Right. I'm going to check, of course, our phone to see if there are any comments. But so of course, one of the things, as I said, I know you have a family. I don't know whether you want to talk about it, but what are some of the, what can you share in terms of, the things that you've been doing to be able, to look this healthy, since 10, you're 50 plus.
yeah.
Yeah, so what
No,
are
I'm not 50 plus.
no, no, I'm saying, hey, man, sawa basi.
Okay, leave it
So,
there. 50 plus. Okay,
okay.
that's enough.
Yes, so, okay, all right. So, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do in the UK and also, whether
Um,
it's your family, and then also at
okay,
the end, also share some of these tips.
I
What
am
are these
doing
things? Yes.
yeah, at the moment, I work with with young people, with youth, um, in the healthcare system in the UK, and I'm also uh, 2 days a week. Sometimes it could be 1.5 to 2 days a week. Um, I'm working as a constituency outreach officer for our local MP in the city where I live. So the third thing I do is I'm a columnist for newspapers back there. So I do a lot. In fact, I've even written on the experience of diabetics in Kenya and try and relate it with over there. So I do column pieces. So I have a busy life with family, and my kids are young. I have a 21-year-old, and then the rest are younger. Uh, and I try to do as much in sports as possible. This is very useful for our brothers and sisters here who are diabetic or where their kids are diabetic, type one. It's so important to balance your life, especially with sports, because um, in the future, if the complications come,
Yes.
you may not be able to do so much in the way of sports. But
So you're saying you're active, generally very active.
yeah, I play tennis.
Okay.
I do I run about in the park, but mostly tennis at least twice a week. And I'm talking about aggressive tennis.
Hmm.
I've been playing tennis for a while, so and again, the problem with those kinds of sports is that the likes of this pump, if it's a sweaty tennis session, it's just gonna come off. I can't remember the number of times I've just chucked it off my waist and thrown it
Yeah.
because it's annoying me
Mm.
that it's just starting to peel off. So there are those frustrations, but those frustrations are nowhere. And I want to just put this in bold, nowhere near the frustrations that face Kenyans or people in Africa, especially,
Yeah.
or other parts that are struggling in the world in terms of accessing diabetes therapy.
Yeah.
It's type 1 diabetes treatment. I think they go through so much. If I start comparing, it's I cannot imagine. For example, I was in my village, and I was speaking to people in the market, and I asked them if they know any person who has, diabetes. You can't tell them type one.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
say
Yeah. It's
diabetes,
just, yeah. It's easy to
unless you're
understand.
talking to a clinician or a medical person over there. And they were telling me, yes. And the next thing they say, they don't even know there's a thing called insulin. People just dying,
Mm.
because there is no diagnosis. And if there is, they can't afford medication because they're out there in the remote.
Yeah.
So can you imagine someone in Lodwa
Mm.
or in the middle of
I
nowhere?
mean, you don't even have to
Yeah,
go to Lodwar,
yeah,
Eli, even in Nairobi,
right.
and also even when we look at the prices of insulin, or
Yeah,
even diabetes medication, it's, sometimes I think it weighs too much on people. And of course, with the cost of living and all that. So anyway, just back a little bit. So of course, you've been staying active. What else have you been doing,
hmm,
to just, as a way of sharing these tips with, anyone who is listening? Because largely the fundamentals, in a way of, managing, let me say whether it's type 1, type 2, they're more or less like similar. But I don't
yeah.
know, are there some specific things you've been doing as a person? Of course, exercise is one of them. Do you watch what you eat? What else? All those other things.
I also share a lot openly about diabetes awareness. So at some point, I was struggling to speak about type one because I felt as if we were extremely discriminating against type twos.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Mm,
they feel the same because sometimes we of type one we think we're suffering more than the type two diabetes people,
mhm,
but I cannot compare, comment on how they're struggling, but I think they're struggling just as much. And the problem is, sorry, I was for a long while on social media broadcasting
so you openly talk
diabetes.
about it,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was talking
Mm.
about it left, right, and center
Why is that? Is that a good thing? How does,
because I
yeah,
think so. Yeah,
yeah,
because even in those so-called developed economies,
yeah,
there's so much stigma and ignorance,
yeah.
like at a different level, but it's there. It's for real.
So am I right to say
You
that in a way it makes that, you know, sort of like, you know, you accept who you are, you know, so that,
Yeah.
all right,
For example, I'll give you an example,
yeah,
right? We've talked in our group here in the WhatsApp group about like or in your platform about how diabetes insulin therapy can affect mental health.
yeah,
And this is one of the serious things that has been avoided in terms of discussion, or because you find that that time when that person is having a hypo, people think he or she is mad,
yeah,
you know, because you're very abrupt. People think you're
you,
not listening.
yeah, or drunk
Oh, I
ideally,
get this at my work,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm looking at like I'm looking at my blood sugar levels, and only me who knows what's happening, but they don't know.
yeah,
So they think you're either drunk, you're mad or insane, or you're talking gibberish because sometimes type ones when they're having their hypos, either they're not talking
yes.
or they're talking gibberish.
Yeah, they would actually even look like they're normal to some extent to
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
W-
So these are some of the things that I've
do you
been
also talk
talking about.
openly to your, you know, people at work about, you know,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
okay,
some people don't like to hear about it. You can read body language,
yes,
but the more they don't like to hear, the more I tell them,
okay,
because because I just want to put it out there because it's like epileptic people.
yes,
Uh, you know how people describe them in very disparaging ways, and sometimes people think they're careless
yeah,
in looking after themselves. Is the same thing people do about type 1 diabetics or diabetics in general. People joke about diabetes, you know,
yeah,
and they think it's funny,
and
to make jokes
yes,
about it, because they're not the ones who are stabbing themselves, sorry, with insulin 4 times a day,
hmm,
and they say, okay, deal with it, stop milking it, it's fine, deal with it. But there are lots more people who are suffering depression
yeah,
and various mental health conditions because of the background of that type 1 diabetes. And I think that the more that people share and talk about it openly, it's better that way. Yeah.
tell me, Eli, I would later on, you know, ask what are being like, you know, the low moments, you know, in
Yeah.
a bit. But what what
I
I can,
can't count.
we should actually probably, you know,
I
talk
can't
about this.
count.
You, you know, two or three.
I can't
Tell me,
count.
yeah.
I think um, I think one of the I'll give an example. This was last year.
Mm,
Last year when I had an episode
hypo.
of a hypo,
Mm.
which actually was my mistake rather than a kind of a natural hypo. Um,
What do you mean your
I
mistake?
what basically on this pump
Yeah.
thing, I had gone to play sports, after work, and I had reduced the pace. I thought I had reduced the pace of insulin
Okay.
on the pump by 40%. So I came back home. My wife, she had cooked for the kids. That day I wasn't working, so she went to work. I was supposed to now hand the food to the kids on the table,
Yes.
all ready.
Yeah.
But all I can remember
Yeah.
was, uh, you know, ambulance paramedic
Wow.
who had been in my house for 2 hours or just over 2 hours, treating me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Must have been
Yeah, it was
tough.
hard because
Yeah.
up till then I've been looking after myself very well, and I
Yes.
was trying to get used to this new pump.
Mm.
Basically, that the lowest thing about that
Yeah.
was I then got urinal incontinence. I peed on myself.
Oh, oh,
At
bye.
the time, what happened basically, I'll speak
Yeah.
about this openly.
Yeah.
The the paramedic walked into the house,
Yeah.
and apparently my kids have told me this story. I was standing on on the hallway like
Zombie
like a
was.
zombie,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
literally against the wall.
Yes.
And this man, he had already got the way the ambulance they get the information before they arrive.
Yes.
So he rushed back to his car and got enough injections of Lucozade.
Yes.
I remember him saying that he gave me three stabs of on my shoulder,
To
and he said I
increase
was
your
struggling.
sugars.
Yeah,
Yes.
and apparently the shock that I got
Yes.
in those injections are the ones that made me pee on myself.
Oh man. Man.
So
Yeah.
when I got up on the sofa because they had managed to put me on the sofa, is when now I realized how why am I
Just tell me.
so I that was my lowest for years.
Yes.
Yeah,
Do you
and
like have that kind of hyper awareness where you feel like of course we before all this,
hypo
yes,
awareness.
sort of like you then quickly correct, or
Yes,
I
yes.
actually, but I see you also have the glucogel, which I think also you quite use when you
Oh
might
yeah,
be
I carry those things because it's necessary, because uh, but in that case it was because I had done the wrong thing with
yes,
the medication. I had, instead of putting 40%
yes,
down, for the insulin to be absorbed,
yes,
it was 40% up.
okay,
So it caused the hypo, and it was a major hypo. So the ambulance guy said, "You are very lucky,
mm,
Oh yeah, you've got good kids.
yeah,
You're very lucky because this could have been something else."
would have been worse, huh?
Yeah, because he said that my hypo was below.
Wow,
There was no reading.
nothing.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel a bit strange about insulin. Should it be a controlled drug or something? That's something for another day. But I feel that it is the medication that can kill you
Hmm.
if you don't respect it.
Yeah,
And I'm sure that our people in this group or any other type 1 diabetics know that it's not a thing you can play around with.
yeah,
And so I respect insulin so much. So this pump, I call my pump my artificial pancreas,
yeah.
because without it, or the pens that I use as an emergency,
Mm.
there is nothing else I can do.
All right.
Yeah,
So I know, and I would like you to share as well. I know you've had a very good kind of ideas on what we could do as, let me say, the MMC as a first step, but also generally for the government. Whether it's county governments, whether it's
yeah,
the current government. What are some of the ideas and thoughts you have around what can be done to make it easy for people to manage diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2?
yeah,
And also maybe as from the individual perspective, what can people do? But maybe let's start with some of the ideas and thoughts you have around,
yeah.
yeah,
I think if we go to the United Nations standards, the fundamental and basic rights of people, health is one of those top on the list. And it doesn't matter cancer, malaria, uh, you know, gynecological problems, pediatric problems for the children, diabetes, epilepsy, health comes first. What I always say, if the health of a nation, and I mean medical health,
yeah,
is bad, then the whole system crashes. So I believe that not just a national government, but the county governments in Kenya should have some form of like there should be an intervention in terms of budget that allows the county governments to factor in how they can help people, especially in the rural areas, to be diagnosed for free, but then whoever company or organization diagnoses them is paid by the government. Yeah.
yeah,
this should be a continuous, this should be a permanent thing, the least we could ask for, because I am aware that lots of people will be dying because of diabetes related illnesses, sorry, diabetes related situation, type 1 or 2, because they've not, simply because they've been misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And that's rough. That's very rough. So there should be, I think, laws that protect people with type 1 diabetes so that they're not discriminated against. There's also, I believe, should be laws that protect other people from what type 1 diabetes can lead to. In terms of, for example, in the UK, what they do is uh, driving, for example. Yeah.
Okay.
If you've had a couple of diabetes, sorry, type 1, sorry, hypo unawareness,
Okay.
it's very dangerous to drive.
All right. Because it could cause
You
accidents and.
could kill
Mm,
people.
all right.
So, uh, hypo unawareness, if it's a regular thing, that the person, there should be a law where the person can submit to the authorities or their doctor and say, look, this is my situation.
Yeah.
There should be a kind of the driving license people should be aware about this. Is a very important thing because they've realized in the Western countries that people have caused accidents because of hyper unawareness, which is
Mhm.
quite dangerous.
Yes.
And okay, we can say that that's a really punitive action against type 1 diabetics, that it's actually we're using insulin and so on and so forth. But the thing is, I think it's important to look for a way
Yeah.
to address this
So if I hear
because
you correctly,
yourself,
yes.
Kenya
Yes.
is one of the top for car
Yes,
accidents,
yes, the
and we don't know
death
where this is coming
tolls.
from. Yeah,
Yes, I see that sense that within probably our regime or let me say licensing kind of probably through NTSA, we should have a way to sort of like identify
yeah,
that.
they should
But
work with
yes,
the health
yeah. So
department.
you talked about diagnosis, make it a way like
Free.
primary free,
Yeah,
probably also helping in medication. And of course, now things like the protect some of the rights of these people, whether it's at work,
yeah, yeah.
whether they are on the roads. All right. I don't know.
Because I believe that the discrimination that goes on against diabetics is real, even in terms of the insurance sector. I've not even started yet, doing a rant about that.
Yeah.
We'll sit here forever, me talking about it,
Talk,
because
talk about it
I
a bit.
believe that
Yeah.
um, the type 1 diabetics are being penalized for who they, for their condition. And I can understand where the risks, the the insurance companies and risks and all that, but at the end of the day, that condition um, should not deny the person access to
General
credible insurance. Yeah,
insurance.
general
Yes.
insurance.
Yeah. And or make it
Yeah,
punitive or more
yeah,
expensive.
and also,
Yeah.
yeah, how to protect young people who have type 1 diabetes, because I believe that in the schools, for example, if there is like unilateral decisions by counties to help feed the children with type 1 diabetes or diabetes in general, in terms of what do they need to eat, in terms of their carbs, and all that.
Yeah.
Those things may look like um, hollow, but I think those are things that should be addressed for the future. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Eli. I know you also donated pens, which I'll generously and freely also, ask some of our members in our Type 1 group to come pick Lantas and Novorapid. So we're gonna, take this to cold storage shortly. But thank you so much for
Yeah,
this gesture.
I would just like to say,
Yes.
because of not being able to use them, those were emergencies, so
Yeah.
I'll
There is
donate
no
them.
need of
Thank you. Yeah, yeah,
going back with them.
yeah.
Yeah, asante sana. So, now I'll probably say, this is open. Is there anything you want to talk about, generally, from your experience? What message would you give out to, some of our group members who really look up, up to you to as a source, I think, of inspiration, myself included? Generally, the floor is yours.
I want our group members and diabetics who are not in the group, or on other platforms where there might be some type 1 diabetes um, uh, conversations. Sometimes I feel a bit sad to see that people are nearly giving up because they've been diagnosed by the doctors that they have type 1 diabetes. They're in shock. I think that they should be in shock, yes, but they should have that honeymoon period a little bit longer, because it's necessary for them to just lead a normal life. Because if they're in shock and then they get into a honeymoon period where they can now adjust, but then they forget that this thing is going to be with them forever. They should just try and adjust at their own pace, yes, but they should not feel as if this is the end of the world. I know it's easy to say that,
Yeah,
because as you're aware, some of our type 1 diabetics also have other conditions.
yeah,
So it makes it difficult, mad for them. They don't know how to cope. Um, but I would say that if they feel that they can't cope, or they're having what we call um, insulin needle burnout, or insulin burnout, like injections burnout, they need to speak to someone, to their doctor. They need to speak to you guys. They need to address this with their family or friends, because when someone has that insulin therapy burnout, they can decide not to take insulin, and you can't do nothing about it
yeah,
because it's them. So they need to kind of approach it, um, uh, very carefully. I'm not preaching here about this, but I think it's something that we need to appreciate, that insulin or therapy or needle burnout, injections burnout, is a real thing, and it affects many type 1 diabetics. So I'm just trying to support them and see, if they have any questions, they can ask me
yes,
about this. I will end by saying
yes,
in that bit that I'm not an expert of diabetes. I am not a teacher or a facilitator of diabetes therapy. I am just a person who happens to have this condition, and I would like to just what I did there was to share, um, and compare, and also wish for the best for what we can do in the future.
all right.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I mean, I know you're flying out on Sunday.
Sunday. Yeah,
I don't know. We will be having
a party.
like a get together for our guys in Type 1
Okay,
group.
right.
We call it the Red Drop Hangout. We
All right.
probably, yeah, we're thinking of a location. I think we're gonna do it probably at Uru Gardens. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends called Betty, a nutritionist, knows this, but I think it's it's something that I'm also looking forward to. Hang out with people. We're not gonna talk about I don't know,
Yes.
educate people. Just people be free, and in a way the message we're trying to pass, and of course you living proof is that type 1 or type 2 diabetes really doesn't stop you, from
Yeah.
achieving your potential, living your full life, having a family.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about, especially for the guys who could be, watching this, is that one of the initiatives that I took, on behalf of DMMC, is that we started a foundation. It was, properly registered. It's been a long, sort of like journey, but the idea
Yes.
of Diabetes and Hypertension Foundation is to sort of like have it as a vehicle, that can address, whether there are things to do with maybe, support for members, who are, members of this foundation. Could be things from medication, could be also things like even, even when, whether it's, giving birth and all that, so they ideally, and this is something that I would encourage guys, maybe later on when I share in our group, I want people to share, sort of to join this foundation, because I think it's one of those things that I think as individuals we can do as we wait for the government, and I like the idea of sponsoring a bill that all these things that we're talking about. I just don't want us to talk about and leave them at it. But as the MMC, we're gonna look around and find people we can work with. What bills
Yes.
are we going to
Yes.
sponsor? How can we make it, for example, even with even in Nairobi County, to provide as for free, insulin for type 1s, and people are not able to afford. So these are some of the initiatives I want to promise you that I'm going to take up, and
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure, Ailey,
Thank you.
chatting with you.
Thank
And
you.
asante sana.
Thank you.
All right.
You're
Cheers,
welcome.
man. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. That is it. I know, as I said, this was not planned. So if there's anything that we might, have left out, Ellie's in our group, at least now you get to see him. Be free, ask all those questions. And we look forward to also inviting some of you guys to this podcast studio. Oh, by the way, this studio is owned by us. So if you're watching us, especially the guys in our groups, and you have these dreams, you want to record a podcast, you want to do something, I want to, also say it, out there that this studio. You can come in, record whatever you want. And it will be for free, especially for the guys in our group. So, asante.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you.
See you in the next one. Yeah, nice one. All right. Thank you.